Hey guys, welcome to another Trade Genius podcast. Bob and Phil here. We wanted to discuss the big elephant in the room with crypto, and that is the parent company to the GBTC fund, and they're on the brink of insolvency, and everyone's wondering what's going to happen to this 600,000 plus Bitcoin that sits in GBTC. Are they going to dump it on the market? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's go.
Trade Genius.
Okay, so Bob, a lot of stuff that we've seen come through Twitter and whatnot about what's going on with these guys. So let's dive into a lot of the stuff that we've been receiving over the wires. And one thing I wanted to kind of show you guys was the typical script that's been playing out with these guys, right? So Sam from FTX, right? Here's a timeline. We have enough liquid assets on November 7th. The next day, Binance is buying us out. The next day, FTX.US isn't affected. The next day, everything's bankrupt. And, we get something similar with these guys. This is the Genesis. Now, Genesis was a lending arm of Digital Currency Group. That's the parent company. And so DCG, Digital Currency Group, ultimately owns GBTC, the fund. So that's how this is all connected. But Genesis basically says, we don't have any material net exposure. Oh, then we lost 7 million. Okay, well, now we have 175 million that's lost in FTX. And then a week later, sorry, no more withdrawals or new loans from Genesis Lending. And then the next day, we need $1 billion. We got a big hole to cover. And then a few days later, we need to raise. We're going to go bankrupt. All right, so here we go again. Like these guys are just really not instilling a lot of trust. So then they warned yesterday, and kind of what everybody thought would happen is they warned that there would be bankruptcy. And then that hit the wire. And then shortly thereafter, damage control, they say, well, we don't have any plans to file bankruptcy imminently, whatever that means, right? So what does that mean? Next week then? So, and then once again, Binance gets in the mix and they turn it down. And as you can tell with the last time they turned something down with FTX, that didn't go so well after the fact. So those guys probably saw the books and were like, forget that. And then after that, Genesis says, well, we're going to slash our asking raise from 1 billion to 500 million. So then that begged the question, well, maybe did they find someone to come up with half? That we don't know. But what we do know is that they have a drop dead date tomorrow. And they also have a $1.1 billion promissory note from Genesis to Digital Currency Group. So these guys are like, commingling and loaning with each other. It's a mess. And so there's a lack of liquidity. There's loan losses. They have this big hole. They said Regulation M redemptions at Grayscale still being considered. What I gather from that is that's a special consideration from the SEC, mainly with having to do with dealing with market manipulation. What will probably end up happening here, we think, is that instead of this 600,000 BTC getting dumped on the market through some sort of disbursement to come up with shares, they may end up selling the Grayscale fund to someone. And the reason for that is because there's no redemption policy built into the fund structure. So what may happen is they will sell this thing. And the reason why they probably will have a taker for it is because if you guys notice they have almost $10 billion of BTC under management, and they have an annual fee of 2%. So what that means is they make almost $200 million just administering this fund, which is huge. That's huge. So there's probably going to be some takers for some multiple of that annual earning. And then they can come up with, try to close the gap that way possibly. And
but they'd have to get they'd have to get 5x.
Right, they'd have to get 5x.
So,
and that's probably a cleaner way of getting this done. So I think the odds of this thing getting, is BTC going to be dumped on the market tomorrow, which I think was the growing concern. I don't think that's going to be the case, but we do need to keep tabs on this tomorrow. So as that develops, we'll let you guys know. But Bob, you had some charts related to kind of like all this funk that we're in. And I think the first one we have up is SI. So maybe you can tell us what is SI and how does this play out?
Well, SI is Silvergate Bank. And look, and if you notice something, and before I get into that, I just want to just comment on some things Phil said. Look, whenever there's a whiff of something wrong and they lie to you for the first time, just get out, okay? They're playing for time. There's an old saying, he who panics first panics best. And when we got our first whiff of this stuff, with these exchanges, we came on this show and we told you guys, just get your money out of every exchange and get it into your wallets as fast as you possibly can. Okay, and if you couldn't do that, sell what you had, get the cash, and withdraw the money out of your account as fast as you can. Because we don't know where this is going to end. Right. And you just have to look at Silvergate Bank here. Look at this. It's been 6 months just running down, Phil. And it's not stopping. Now, I think it's called the terminal acceleration is happening now. And so, we're shorted, and I'm looking for it in that 1055 area. It's going to probably go lower than that. That's just almost where it went live, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, we've been anybody who's been watching us the last couple weeks, we've shown chart after chart of this giant Eiffel Tower structure, right? Big up and big down back to where it started, and this is probably going to not only do that, but then some, because I think, like you said, it IPO'd there roughly, and it's probably going to go lower.
Yeah, here's the problem. These aren't like the banks like 2008, where you have the government backstopping. Okay, they're going to let everybody here go bankrupt. Mm-hmm. Okay, if that's what's going to happen, and because and actually this is a really positive thing, and we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. There is actually some good news going to come from this, but right now we're in a prairie fire, and we're just killing out all the dead grass, basically getting rid of all the leverage in the system, all the opacity, which means not transparent out there. And we got to see over the next couple months who's going to blow up because of it, because they didn't do their due diligence. And so Silvergate Bank, there's a really good possibility that it basically goes belly up, because there's no trust in the counterparties anymore. Right. There's no trust in their reserves. There's no trust in the value of the reserves. Right. If I told Phil, I want you to lend me money for my house, and this is a real situation, 2008, right? 2006, my house was worth $955,000 in 2006. And if I said to Phil, hey, just lend me 80% on that, Phil, you'd be like, that's a good bet. 2009, my house was worth $540,000. Okay? If I was forced to liquidate, I would have nothing, and Phil's invested in me would have been wiped out.
Yep.
That's the problem we have now with people. Okay? You don't know where the reserves are, unless the reserves are, 3-month treasuries at this point, right? Or Bitcoin at 10,000 is your reserve, right? You don't have confidence in the collateral, or gold at 1,500. You see what I'm saying? So I think these banks are going to get wiped, and then it brings us to the miners then too. This is a miner that we have puts on, and which is Mara, and people are thinking just because we're in that zone here. Maybe all the bad news is coming out. It's a good time to buy, right? Blood's in the street. People don't understand that there are miners now going default, bankrupt, shutting down overnight now. And if you can't make money on this stuff, you have to start using your coins. So it becomes like a double-edged sword. So that's what I personally think, and maybe you can opine, Phil, that companies like Mara that have to use Bitcoin they have on file, right? And to pay the bills, they may be dumping into a low here and cause that, that basically that accelerated low, the puke out, if you will, before everything's in strong hands again. Right. So Mara, look, I can see Mara at 150. I've been shorting this thing from 920, 925, and I think we're in the low sixes as of today. And all I'm doing is I'm short by puts. I don't go short anything. Puts and calls. So I'm just going to be rolling down my puts here and giving myself more and more time. And so this is the general, and then we're still with our Coinbase puts. We just talked about Coinbase, so I didn't want to throw that chart up again. But Coinbase has a ways to go too, because again, it's trust. One thing you'll notice when you have these big situations like that, volume drops, trading activity falls, and that's the mother's milk of an exchange. Is they got to get those animal spirits going again, and the market just may go cold for a while, which basically kills Coinbase's business. So I just think this all needs to play out for either the next couple of months, and we still don't know where all the polls are on Friedman, right?
Right.
Every day it gets worse and worse. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's what I want to talk about, Phil.
Yeah, no. And then I think we're going to dive a little bit more into miners tomorrow on Bitcoin. So you guys don't want to miss that episode because they actually are a great signal as to when to get into Bitcoin in these big cycles. And so we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the effects of when these things start to get to the bottom. And as Bob said, they have to start selling their Bitcoins. So they all build up a war chest and they have to sell it into the bottom of the cycle because usually they don't hedge very well, and they start burning cash. And so what do? You have to start selling off the Bitcoin that you stored up, and that creates like a negative feedback loop until it washes out. But we'll discuss what prevents that from totally imploding, because Bitcoin does have some built-in self-healing mechanisms that brings balance to the force, if you will. So we'll discuss that tomorrow. But yeah, I think that covers what we needed to get covered today, Bob, with just all the goings on in crypto. It's just every day is a new drama, it seems.
Man, it's like a soap opera.
It
And we can
is.
even talk to you about some hedging strategies too, using the stock market to help you hedge Bitcoin holdings without having to disperse your coins either into the slow.
Right.
So stay tuned. There's some really good stuff. Always opportunities in the midst of calamity, guys, and we're gonna point them out to you.
Yep. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Trade Genius Podcast. Once again, we thank you for watching. Please hit like and subscribe. That really helps us out. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Trade Genius.